G'day folks, Chris McLean, Peak Performance and Transformation Coach, and welcome to another episode of the Peak Performance and Predictable Growth Show, the Peak Performance Show for creative agency founders, owners and leaders, where we explore the agency journey from the unique perspective of those at the coalface of the industry. And my guests help us unlock and dissect strategies, tools and tactics that are working right now in the trenches to help you deliver better results for your clients and grow and scale your business to 6-7 figures and beyond. And my pleasure today to welcome in the studio Jacob Ransom from Ransom Digital. They're a full-service agency who help local companies build marketing systems that are built on fundamentals and long-lasting marketing principles, as all things should be. This allows our clients to attract the customers they want, generate more revenue, and spend more time working on their business instead of in it, which really is quintessentially, that is what a business is when you get to work on it and not just stuck on the tools. Jacob, thanks for jumping on the show, mate. Great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for being here. Is Jake or Jacob?
Either one.
What do you roll by? Either one.
Just call me Jake. Yeah.
All right. We'll go colloquial. So take us through Ransom Digital. How did you get into this space? So did you have did you study marketing, digital, that kind of stuff, or did you just sort of fall into it somehow? How did you start this business?
Both, actually. So I went to film school. I worked on a Bruce Willis film afterwards, and it was super fun. Cool. But I went to film school, so I went there to study, though, the business side of film. So I've always been involved in and interested in explaining story, but specifically within like a real world context. So I love the film industry, different things like that, but specifically the business side. I've always wanted to be in the commercial area. Afterwards, so this is where the other part is afterwards I left and I started, I joined my family's painting company, like house painting company, as their marketing director. Because my idea was that I wanted to work with businesses in marketing. And I was like, I don't want to learn on someone else's business. So I did it with our own. And so both, I studied it and I kind of actually lived it out in terms of being an actual client of, living, being one of my clients. And we developed our methodology and stuff from the inside out through actual experience, not just study, but heavily influenced by study.
Yep. So, well, I mean, that's the way it should be, right? You can learn a whole lot of stuff in books, but until you sort of take it into the field and sort of battle test it and get that real world experience, it's not for nothing, but nothing beats that practical application of the stuff that you're learning. So in that regards, did you sort of get in on the tools and learning sort of different platforms and different ways to advertise your business? Was that mostly self-learned? Did you just kind of jump on and go, all right, well, I need to understand Google, I need to understand Facebook, let me just go do a course? Or how did you develop the skill set and the craft of running ads?
All the above, yeah. So I was explaining to one of our new hires today, we're trying to teach them our Facebook ad things, and we took a walk because he was having a hard time kind of just wrapping his mind around it. And I was explaining how he's coming into it with just full barrage, coming into the web that is marketing on Facebook and digital. And I got started, we focused on the creative first. So, being a business owner, I just did what I knew. I came from film school, so I focused heavily on the creative. We didn't even use Facebook ads, nothing like that. A lot of it was organic. And we were doing a lot of creative, and then it just kind of naturally progressed to the point of like, we're doing really well with organic, but we're like maxed out, and then you start to look for the next part, like, oh, Facebook ads, can we take this organic and kind of put it through there? So we just kind of learned one step at a time, and it's a combination of, I would always try to self-teach, and then I would kind of approach the course or learning or something like that. But almost everything was developed through our own experience.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's a great way to, again, get started, because when you're learning it yourself, it's a different type of learning than going and getting sort of a hacked version or someone else's version of
right,
how to do that thing. So I think both are valuable. You can definitely get the shortcuts of, hey, focus on this and not all this other stuff, going into programs and that sort of thing. So I think that is valuable. But yeah, that doing it yourself and just kind of working it out and having to cognitively figure stuff out for yourself and try and fail and mess some stuff up and learn and pick it up. That's a really valuable way to build that skill set. Having come from that film background and that storytelling background, did you find that really helped sort of amplify? Did you bring that skill set across to sort of organic? Sort of, you said you focused on creative. Do you do a lot of video? Or how do you find that transition or that implementation of storytelling and that film sort of aspect into the work that you're doing?
Yeah, it's actually like the bedrock. So not just, the practical parts like, using video, and we know how to use cameras, and we know how to do all this stuff, and we know how to edit and craft a story, but it really is actually storytelling. So you go in and you write scripts, and you learn. When you write a script, you don't just learn formatting, but you learn how to write a character that's believable. And so you really focus on getting in their head. And so that has transitioned into marketing beautifully. As you can probably guess.
Yeah.
Right. So we were developing avatars before we even knew what an avatar was, right? For our company. We knew where we were in the story of our customer. We knew we weren't the main character. We knew our customer was the main character, and we knew who we were within their story in terms of like their conflict and what they're going through and how we're there to help them. And so that just helped us craft messaging without even knowing really what we were doing, right? It helped us craft messaging that resonated, and it allowed us to create content that rose to the top in a sea of just, valueless content.
And sort of tactically and technically, how does that look? Is that engaging visuals? Is it the right words? Is it a combination of all that stuff? How does that translate into tactically? What are you doing? Because I know you talk about telling a story. It sounds amazing, and that's what we want to do. But how do you actually tell a story on a social post, on a Facebook ad? How do you capture that essence of that sort of filmic storytelling essence into something that someone's going to digest in 7 seconds and then move on from?
Yeah. So in script writing, you learn a lot about what's called open loops. And in script writing, you just constantly, in the first act, you got to leave something at the end to get them to get invested into the second act. In the second act, you're going to certain points, and you're going to keep doing these open and closed loops and the flow of information. That's why you watch old movies. They have really great flow of information, different things like that. It's kind of lost its touch nowadays. But marketing is the exact same way. So practically, right, it really depends on the product, depends on the customer, the client. But first thing we find out is who is our main character, right? And what journey are they going on? What is it they're trying to achieve, right? And then what we do is we start to act as if we're like the guide, or and the actual archetype, right, is the guide. That's an actual like filmic archetype for it.
Yeah.
But we act as though we're the guide. And what a guide will always do is present them or push them towards their future. And what they'll do is they'll present like the dream in front of them, and they'll be like, do you want to reach this? And they're over here. And they're like, yes, I do. And they're like, I can help you reach that. Does that make sense? So practically in painting, it's very visual. Like the painting industry, like house painting, is very visual, painting cabinets, different things like that. It's extremely visual. So we'd use a lot of visuals for that, right? We would show a client, we would show the progress. We have what we call them project videos, where we show beforehand, we show, the person in their house. It's very HGTV-esque, right? Which is showing them, in it. They're like, oh, I just hate it. It's 80s, and we finally got the stuff, and we just want to make this change, and this company is going to come in and help us do it. And then we show the little bit of the process, and then we spend a lot of time on afterwards. And what it does is when we show that to our customers, it's what we do naturally in movies. We put ourselves in the hero's spot, right? So we just reverse engineer that. We're like, you know what I mean? Who's the hero? and purpose create the hero as someone who uses our service. And what they do is they naturally put themselves in their hero's shoes within that video. And next thing you know, you have creative that's doing very well. Now that's for visual, extremely visual things. Obviously there's different, it would adjust based on the clientele and the business.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful way to explain that part of the process. And then you sort of talked also about taking that user on that journey, and that's sort of the first part, right? I'm here and I want to go here. That's sort of the overall. That's like the meta version, the meta vision. This I'm here. I'm at A and I want to get to B. But there's steps in that journey, right? And you sort of talked earlier about step A's job is to get them to step B. Step B is to get them to step C. So how are you weaving that together? That, technically that's right from the Facebook ad or from the ad to a landing page to a sales page to a checkout page. How are you weaving that story from that technical perspective of, obviously from A, which is a Facebook ad, you're not selling your signature program right on the page there. The job of that piece is, the job of the headline is to get them to read the next line. That line gets them to read the next line. So right. that sort of storytelling, how are you stitching that together over that funnel essentially to make sure that they're engaged and they're ready, they know what's coming up, but you're sort of creating that open loop of, I'm excited about what's coming up, and then you give them the next little piece. Yeah.
So, step number one, you got to have something that's special, right? So that's like number one, you can't just, if you don't have something special, it's not going to work. It's got to be something people actually want. But even within that, like there's a micro version, which is even within the ad, right? We know that, I think brand new data says 85+% of, they did like an eye tracking study on Facebook. So they tracked people's eyes when they scroll through Facebook. And it's like 85+% of people are stopping because of the creative. So we know that the creative, and I'm sure people have heard this, but the creative leads to the headline, leads to the copy, leads to usually action. But sometimes, and most of the time, people will make an action off just the headline. So what we'll do is we'll design the creative to stop the scroll within the first 3 to 5 seconds, right? And then we create an open loop to get them to watch and to be invested, right? And there's a really interesting study. You can study actually TikTok videos right now. Look at what videos are performing extremely well, and they all use this methodology if you want to like study it and kind of break down different parts. In terms of like the creative, but you create open loops within the video. And then the headline, you want to, obviously there's a lot of study around headlines, writing headlines, but you want to kind of get the gist across over what can I do with this information? Like, I'm very interested. I love what I'm seeing, right? I'm there. What can I do? And if they're not going to read the copy, the headline should be good enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then if they want to know more, they go to the copy.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting that there's no 85%. Not a small number. And obviously, a lot of people have traditionally focused on the headline and the copy, and that's the thing that's going to grab attention. We spend so much time there, but making that visual element engaging. So is that generally? And I don't like to generally. Is that generally video that's going to be more engaging? Sort of talk about stopping the scroll. Is it a video piece? Is it moving image that's going to stop that scroll that's engaging? Do still images work just as well in your experience?
Still images don't work just as well. We still will utilize still images. We will utilize video top of funnel, and then we'll kind of integrate still images, maybe graphics, like simple graphics, bottom of funnel, and middle of funnel. But in terms of top of funnel, like getting attention of someone who has no idea who you are, we like to use video because of the old adage, a video is worth, or was it, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And if it's running at 30 frames per second, it's 30 pictures per second. You can imagine how many words that is. But that's why we like to use video top of funnel. Video doesn't have to be produced. You can, in terms of creating the creative, we've seen creative that took someone 5 minutes to make, absolutely crush it. And we've seen video that people put thousands of dollars and like a month worth of time into, just completely crash and burn. So we always recommend testing with we do a lot of testing with creative.
Yeah. I mean, essentially that comes down to message, right? And message and targeting. If I'm saying if I've got an amazing story, but I'm telling it to the wrong person, or I'm telling it in the wrong way or within the wrong context of why they're on that platform. So there's a lot of considerations, right? You said you can spend $1 million and make a Michael Bay action adventure masterpiece for your Facebook ad, and no one's going to watch it if it's not the right person, it's not the right time, it's the wrong context. You're coming into the conversation, with the wrong timing, wrong type of conversation to have at that point. So I think that's also really interesting. In terms of, to stick on the video piece again, because I think it's interesting to tease out the details.
Sure.
Captions, no captions. Is that obviously video is becoming much more important? You talk about TikTok. A lot of the suggestions there and on these video platforms are you need to have captions, or at least the words somewhere on the screen so that people can read them. If obviously a lot of people scroll on silent, that sort of thing. So how do you find better conversion rates? Are you finding better performance when you've got captions versus no captions? Is that a thing?
Yeah, captions always. People will self-qualify constantly. So when they're scrolling, their brains are subconsciously self-qualifying. Am I interested in this or am I not? Is it going to give the brain dopamine or not? And then when you stop the scroll, they're going to wait the first about 3 to 5 seconds, and they're going to intuitively decide whether or not they're going to invest their time into that video or they're not. And they're not going to click on it to bring sound up, because Facebook is usually no sound first. So having captions is a must, because then if they decide, it's always the secondary thing. If they decide they're going to watch, then they'll turn on the sound. But usually you got to stick to captions, because most people just won't do it.
Yeah, it's important to get that essentially a micro commitment. Right, I've stopped. This seems interesting. That's it. No, tap into, get engaged, to put the sound on. That's an engagement. Yeah, so I think that I think I need to put more captions on my videos. In terms of length, there's always an interesting conversation around sort of at the top, you sort of top of funnel versus bottom of funnel. At the top, it's something short, snappy. Okay, I get the gist, and then I'm dropping into maybe longer form content as I sort of move down through that funnel. Is that something that you see, or does long form video sort of work up front as well? Is there any? This stuff isn't binary, but it's always interesting to sort of again tease out what you see working and what's effective in that space. Sort of long video versus short, and where in the funnel that ideally sits for people.
Yeah, so I'm a little different on this. So I don't think that it's necessarily what length. I think the length should match the type of video. So if the video is a social, fast-paced, Harmon Brothers style ad, then it's got to be shorter, right? Because it's just the pacing. You can't keep a fast-paced video for very long. It's got to be 1 to 3 minutes, 4 minutes max. But we've also run, neo-documentary style content, 10, 15, 30 minutes top of funnel, and it performs just as well, if not better. So it depends on the context.
Yeah. Just it's always interesting to ask that question and sort of get into those details, because generally, pretty much, if you're going to generalize, it always comes back to who's watching, why are they watching, why are you speaking to them, what are you trying to tell them, what are you trying to get them to do, what do they want. If it's on TikTok, obviously, right, the platform dictates it's 30 to 60 seconds. You're not going to put a long form content on there. But then you've got kind of these dual platforms like Instagram, where you can have a 60-second that then becomes a 12-minute more feature length if you're sort of using IGTV and that sort of thing, where you can get that initial engagement and then click through to that longer form engagement. So I think it's always an interesting conversation just around what part, because there's so many variables in advertising and marketing, the tools and the techniques.
Right.
But do you see, in terms of platform, what's performing really well at the moment? And again, it's a super general question, and it's always going to come down to where's your audience, who are you trying to target? But for the clients that you serve, are you seeing better results in sort of your TikTok and that faster paced social media stuff, or your Joe Rogan 3-hour podcast on Spotify type content?
Yeah. So it is 100% audience. Where's your audience at? We deal with mostly local businesses, small businesses. We're getting into a lot more kind of e-com, but they're still small. And Facebook for our local people with organic Instagram is working really, really well. Facebook, like paid Facebook with organic Instagram for local. And then for e-com stuff, we love Instagram for that, especially if it's for a younger audience. And then e-com, like you have to be on TikTok if you're an e-com. Like if you're not on TikTok, you don't own an e-commerce store. You know what I mean? Like, just,
interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. I hadn't heard that that specificity for that audience before. But why is that? Why do e-com brands need to be on a platform like TikTok? Just because that's where the audience is? What's the rationale for that?
Well, number one, like TikTok's age range is infinite. I mean, is not all 14-year-olds. There are way more people with disposable income on there than you may think. There is a shower head that went from nothing to like one of the largest shower head brands because of a TikTok video. A shower head, right? Because it was just somewhat interesting. It was someone's like, I don't know if it was like drop shipped. I think it was the actual company. Some of you guys probably know what I'm talking about. You probably see their ads all the time. Like if e-com is location based, right? Facebook is fantastic for that because people are constantly on Facebook and people are constantly on TikTok. But the targeting on Facebook can be extremely location specific. On Instagram, it can't. I'm sorry, on TikTok, it can't. So if you're an e-com and you can ship your item, then TikTok is like the number one growth. And if you can figure out the creative, it's also a fantastic paid platform.
Yeah, TikTok's super interesting. It's very, very interesting platform. Like I said, it does have it has that stigma of it's all 14 to 16-year-old girls. Right. But yeah, there's definitely. I mean, I say I'm on TikTok. I'm sort of playing with the platform just because I'm interested to see how these things work. But yeah, there is that massive diversity now, and you're seeing older people coming in, older brands coming in. From my industry, there's coaches and consultants and B2B businesses and all sorts coming to the platform because really that platform is where YouTube was, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and sort of in that same place. But they've got that rapid growth, and if you can get a viral video, you can get 3, 4, 500,000, 1 million views on something if you can kind of crack the TikTok code, as it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of balancing that story out, you sort of said you want to be on TikTok and then you want to have Instagram. How do you generate a sort of mesh? Again, comes down to where that audience is. Are you repurposing the same content for different platforms? Are you creating specific content for a specific platform?
Specific content for specific platforms. So if we're working with an e-com brand that has zero, like they're starting from scratch, or they've previously just been local or something like that, and they're able to ship now or something, and they don't really have a social presence, we will focus on as many avenues as we can, but we'll focus on a single avenue, and we will actually develop a strategy around that particular avenue. And develop content for that avenue. So Facebook and Instagram is somewhat interchangeable, mostly posting on Instagram and then able to push it through to paid for Facebook, and then having just regular paid Facebook for retargeting, different things like that. But then we don't do repurposing too much unless it's content that it makes sense, such as a snippet from a podcast or an interview that they gave, something like that, where it makes sense that it would be repurposed. But if it's something that seems specific, we won't repurpose it.
Yeah, fair. And sort of final question: how do you sit on created content or curated content. Like I said, I'm specifically creating a video or a piece of content that's got a purpose versus the more just kind of documenting behind the scenes. What's that balance sort of look like for you as well? Because again, that's sort of an interesting, how much of myself and personal brand do I put into a business brand? Say if you're a bricks and mortar business, do you, as the business owner, do you show behind the scenes? Do you get into your family and what you do behind the scenes, as well as that more curated content? How do you strike that balance?
We don't have a balance there. We are 100% personal. We believe, it's a core belief of our business, is that people buy from people. They don't buy from brands. They don't buy from well-designed stock photos with graphics over them. They don't buy from those things. They buy from people. Specifically, you've probably heard it, they buy from people that they know, that they like, and that they trust. Yeah. The only way that they're going to be able to know, like, and trust you is if they've either talked to you or seen you. The human brain can't tell the difference between someone on video and seeing them in real life. Like, your brain can't tell the difference. So the owner should be, and that's what we like, specifically our business is, we help business owners make that happen. We're not doing vlogs and different things like that, but we help them create content that is intentional and gets, it triggers those parts in people's brains that gets them to be, we allow them to be a little bit vulnerable, just enough to where people feel like they know them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're triggering a bit of dopamine, but getting that social bonding, a bit of that oxytocin coming through as well, and getting that. We talk a lot about tribal marketing and that kind of thing. Finding people that you know, like, and trust is very much about, this person's in my tribe. This is my vibe. I'm gelling with this person. They understand me. I trust them. I can, and exactly like you said, you need to see that person. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think what you're doing is specifically bringing that sort of filmic quality and that storytelling helps make that even more engaging. And so telling that human story through these digital channels, which I think is really, really cool stuff. If people do want to connect with you, find more about this stuff, come and get some amazing video put together, where's the best place for them to reach out and connect with you and find you in the digital universe?
Yeah, the best place is honestly just to email me, jacob@ransomdigital.com. Other than that, it might get lost, but otherwise our website should be done being built here soon. And obviously you have our Facebook up there. So yeah, that's the best way to get in contact with us.
Cool. So jacob@ransomdigital.com, ransomdigital.com, and facebook.com/ransomdigital. Go check them out. Go get some video storytelling put together for your brand, so you can have that human-to-human connection from your brand to your customer. Jacob, thanks. Sorry, Jake. I'll keep going back to the formal. Thanks for dropping by, mate. I appreciate you spending some time with us here today. It was really valuable. I enjoyed sort of teasing out some of those details and the tactics of some of that stuff that can be nice to talk about, but it's good to get into the granularity of it sometimes. So yeah, I appreciate your insights on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I had a great time.
Absolute pleasure. And thanks everyone at home, on your way to work, wherever you are tuning in. Thanks for joining us here today, and look forward to catching you on the next episode. Until then, stay well. See you then.